Ooh. So I've been thinking back and forth about what do you do as a first video? What do you do as the first thing that you put out there and try? Because it's not going to be like the best thing you do. It's going to be something which you just have to kind of try and see how it goes. And it's this. It's that this Venn diagram of sorts kind of captures something which basically next to nobody or very few people really understand, which is that yes, the world is bad right now. Yes, we can actually improve it. And finally, we know we can improve it because we've already improved the world so drastically from what it used to be. Basically, being in the past was like one of the worst outcomes that you could really have. You and I are obscenely lucky in a way we can't really even imagine, to be born in this period, to live right now, because right now is uncontroversially the best time to be alive. There is incredibly good reasons to think this, and actually it's pretty hard to come up with reasons to think anything else. Even if you were the richest person in the world in the past, your life sucked compared to what it could be now, and probably to what it is now. If you are over 5 years old watching this, which really you should be, you have achieved something which, until very recently, 40% of all people born never achieved. In countries like the UK and America, the rate is somewhere around 0.4% now, and that didn't happen by mistake. In fact, in some of the places of the world where things are way, way harder and where life is much, much worse, they still don't hit 40%. 40% is almost unknown. There are beliefs, kind of statements about whether or not people in the past really cared for their children, because how could they? It would be horrific to think about them losing so many of those children so frequently. And yet, there's quite a bit of evidence that they did feel that way about their children, that they did care for them just as we did, and that they felt it just as much as people today would. It's just difficult for us to imagine because it seems so horrendously horrific that that is actually how they lived day to day. To take just one from a myriad of possible examples, these are the words of Charles Darwin, writing on the death of his daughter Anne, who died only aged 10. These are not the words of somebody who resigns themselves and thinks, well, hey, that happens all the time. Just have to get over it, I guess. It is real tragedy. It was real tragedy for them. This is far from confined to child mortality. This is something which stretches across all of the globe in pretty much every direction you can measure. Look at literacy rates, whether or not someone can read or write. 200 years ago, it was the case that around about 85% of the world couldn't read or write. Today, that same percentage can. The difference is a complete turnaround. That's not to say that the work is done. We're not saying that 15% of the world as yet cannot read or write is an okay thing. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that the fact that we can talk about reducing it further is incredible evidence of the success that we have already had. If you have glasses, if you wear hearing aids, if you take any form of medication, if you text, if you write, if you read, if you travel by car, plane, train, or even ride a bike, you're doing something that the majority of people in the past had no option of ever being able to do. You have an ability and a freedom that they never had, choices they never had. But I'm actually even burying the lead here somewhat, because all of this is a part of a larger picture, a picture built on technology, innovation, and the constant search for something better. We can see that played out on a global scale by the continuous struggle and the continuous successes in the reduction of global poverty. This is something that pretty much is discussed about basically zero. Like, no one talks about this, and it is, to me, another one of these amazing achievements which just doesn't come up. And in fact, most people don't seem to even be aware of. We have gone from a global norm in which it is the frequent, total, normal life for 85% of the world's population to live in complete poverty. Horrendous poverty. The kind of poverty which today would mean that you were living on less than a single US dollar a day to survive. Try to imagine what you could buy with $1 a day, and that's your life. 85% of the world used to live at that kind of level of poverty. And it wasn't much better for most of the rest. About 94 to 95% of the global population of the past lived on less than $2 a day. That was the norm across human society. You can see it in the past. It's written in their own words. If you look to the Bible, when they talk about going to the land that God gave them, that it was the land of milk and honey. That was the mark of absolute luxurious living. That is not what we measure luxurious living by. That's your cereal in the morning and it costs you barely anything. If you look at estimates of historical global GDP over time, you see that the rise and fall of so many empires of the past, the devastation of plagues and natural disasters, the horrors of wars and famines, all become nothing more than a straight flat line when compared to the drastic success and size of the modern world's economy. The difference between us and them is giant. None of this is to say that the world is perfect. We know that it isn't. But compared to the past, we live in a science fiction universe. Knowing this means that we can think differently about our future. A lot of people look to the future and see insurmountable problems. I think if we look to the past, we can see just how far we've actually come, and that this should give us the confidence that we can create a future that looks as impossible to us now as our present would look to anyone from the majority of our past. In other words, we shouldn't be afraid to dream big. We are only at the start of what human innovation can achieve. I think Jane Jacobs gets this exactly right when she writes, "Poverty has no causes. Only prosperity has causes."